My op-ed, in fact, today at HartmannReport.com is titled "The Prosecutor versus the Felon," and that's very much the case. In fact, they had a little. It's not really a campaign thing because this wasn't a paid ad that ran anywhere. It was just a video that within an hour of the announcement that Joe Biden was stepping down was just popping up all over the internet. And I'm assuming that this came from the Biden-Harris campaign. But this is pretty amazing. It's just a little short thing. It's not even 60 seconds. Like I said, it's not an ad. It's well, whatever you want to call it. Here it is.
Sick of this? Well, think about this. He's a world leader in temper tantrums. She never loses her cool.
That's Harris.
She prosecuted sex predators. He is one.
Grab him by the...
She shut down for-profit colleges that swindled Americans. He was a for-profit college.
At Trump University, we teach success.
Literally. He's owned by the big banks. She's the attorney general who beat the biggest banks in America and forced them to pay homeowners $18 billion. He's tearing us apart. She'll bring us together. This is Trump. And in every possible way, this is the anti-Trump.
So there you go.
So
that's pretty much it. And the anti-Trump. And I think so. I really do. I mean, the accomplishments of this administration are mind-boggling. We have the best economy that we've had since the 1960s. Inflation is down to 3%. The last 2 months, it's been at 0% or negative. 3% used to be the norm. Ronald Reagan never got inflation below 4.1%. Never, in 8 years. And everybody's like, oh, Ronald Reagan had a great economy. Never got inflation below 4.1%. We have the lowest unemployment levels that we've had since the 1960s. We've got, it's just, the economy's just rip-roaring along. And we're building infrastructure at a rate and in a way that we haven't seen since the Eisenhower administration. So anyhow, bottom line, Kamala Harris, I believe, I mean, this is not a done deal yet, but I think it will be shortly, is going to be our presidential nominee. The question is, who's going to be the vice presidential nominee? There are still people kind of speculating about, what happened with Joe Biden and, his pulling out of the race and all that kind of thing. My personal speculation, again, this is just speculation, is that the people around him. Oh, and by the way, let me just tell you for the day, the third hour of our program today, Congressman Ro Khanna of California is going to be with us for the entire hour taking your calls. We're going to do a national town hall meeting with Congressman Khanna. And I will be picking up your calls here in 15, 20 minutes. And for the first 2 hours, we'll just talk about what's going on here with all of this. And we get some big news, as I said. So anyhow, the Biden-Harris take. Oh, the speculation about why Joe Biden stepped down when he did and what led to it, because I think it's really interesting to note that. And I had these dates on my one sheet here, and it looks like they vanished. Oh, here it is, right here. That the Kennedy-Nixon debate was the last week of September 26, 1960. The Carter-Ford was October 6th. Carter-Reagan was October 28th. Are you noticing these are all late fall debates? The Bush-Clinton debate was October 11th. I mean, basically, presidential debates are either the last week of September or in October, period. I mean, that's you can go back through history, and that's, I mean, the first debate was Kennedy-Nixon, but that's what you find. I mean, I'm not talking about Lincoln-Douglas, but which was actually a Senate run. But somebody talked Joe Biden into doing a debate in June. Now, the people around him have been, roundly criticized for kind of concealing his infirmities. That he's, like most people, 81 years old. He has moments where he loses his train of thought and he mixes names up. I mean, hell, I mix names up, and sometimes I lose my train of thought. It's just, it happens to everybody, regardless of age. But it does, get worse as you get older. I don't think in any way this diminishes his ability to be president. I get it that the Republicans are now hysterically running around with their hair on fire. Oh my God, we got to enforce the 25th Amendment. He's got to step down. If he can't run for office, he can't run the White House. Well, certainly he can. Running for office requires a very different skill set than running the country. Running the country requires, calm and patience and thoughtfulness and stability and wisdom. Running for president, you got to be a good public speaker. And Joe Biden was never a good public speaker, with his stutter. But now, as age on top of that, he's just become a very poor public speaker. His voice is kind of raspy and sounds elderly. Not a good thing. So, he dropped out. But what's interesting to me is that I am guessing that the people around him said, maybe you should think about handing this thing off to Kamala and not running. And he said, no, I can do this. I can kick Trump's ass. And they said, okay, let's see if you can do it early enough, like in June, that if you can't pull this thing off, we can get Kamala in there or somebody else. We can replace you. And he went along with that. And he blew it in June. And that's, of course, what led to all this. So I think that those of us who have been criticizing the people around him, I'm not among them, but I certainly have been reading this all over the message boards. I think you need to think twice. I suspect that that's what brought us to this moment. So there's that. Just by way of history, I'm a history freak, as you know. President George Washington on September 19th, 1796, issued a resignation letter. He had served 2 terms, but the Constitution didn't limit you to 2 terms. And most Americans actually wanted him to stay on because he was doing a great job. In fact, there were some Americans who wanted him to become king. And so this is from his I'm leaving. This is not his farewell address, which was a whole nother speech. This is his I'm resigning letter. He said, and I thought this was fascinating how self-depreciating it is. It's just 2 sentences. Here it is. One of them is rather long. Though in reviewing the incidents of my administration, I am unconscious of intentional error, I am nevertheless too sensible of my defects not to think it probable that I may have committed many errors. Whatever they may be, I fervently beseech the Almighty to avert or mitigate the evils to which they may tend. I shall also carry with me the hope that my country will never cease to view them with indulgence, and that after 45 years of my life dedicated to its service with an upright zeal, the faults of incompetent abilities will be consigned to oblivion, as myself must soon be to the mansions of rest. Incredible. I mean, that was George Washington. So, and there are people are drawing parallels between George Washington and Joe Biden right now, and I think they're legitimate. So here we have the prosecutor versus the felon. This thing is rolling along rapidly. Every state Democratic Party chair has now endorsed Kamala Harris. Ken Martin, president of the Association of State Democratic Committees, made that announcement yesterday or last night. Following President Biden's announcement, he says, our members immediately assembled to unite behind the candidate who has a track record of winning tough elections, blah, blah, blah. I've got 55 things you need to know about Kamala Harris. We'll get to that maybe in a little bit. The Republicans are already hysterical, as I mentioned. And I'm going to get to that. Actually, I'll probably get to, I'll get to that in a minute, too. One thing that I thought was really interesting, though, I subscribe to the Financial Times. It's kind of the world's premier business publication. And Rana Foroohar is the global business columnist, and she has been writing just brilliant stuff. If you subscribe to the Financial Times, you know what I'm talking about. And you can get her emails, her articles pushed out to you in email, which is how I get them. And her column today I thought was brilliant. She said Kamala Harris should quickly reaffirm and own the post-neoliberal economic policy transition underway in the Democratic Party. Now, nobody's talking about this. The next to the last book that I wrote in the Hidden History series is The Hidden History of Neoliberalism. And I think it's one of the most important books because it's what happened between Reagan and Obama, because you had this steady stream of Republican and Democratic presidents who all embraced neoliberalism until Joe Biden came along. Arguably Donald Trump. You could say Donald Trump trash-talked neoliberalism, but he didn't really do anything about it outside of the tariffs on China. So anyhow, Rana writes, but what is Bidenomics without Biden? That's something Democrats need to figure out quickly. And I agree with that. I think it's fascinating, but I think it's also really, really important that we acknowledge that Joe Biden has repudiated neoliberalism for the first time, in a big way, for the first time since 1980, or really even since the last 2 years of the Carter administration. And that is what put America back on track. That's what put our economy back together. So, I've got a little more information here about Kamala Harris and what Mike Johnson is up to. I'll share that with you real quick when we come back from the break, and then I'll be picking up your phone calls. It's coming up on, it is 17 minutes past the hour here in the Thom Hartmann Program on this extraordinarily historic day. What could be our first black Indian ancestry woman president.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Southeast Asian is the phrase that is used to describe people whose ancestors come from India. We'll be right back.